Hello, I'm David Chaston with 90 at 9, brought to you by Interest.co.nz. This week, get everything you need to know in 90 seconds at 9 o'clock. With news, Chinese currency reserves have fallen below $3 trillion for the first time in 5 years. But first, the overnight dairy auction has seen prices in US dollars rise by 1.3% from the last auction. This was somewhat better than expected if you're reading the NZX dairy derivative signals, and it represents the second consecutive rise and the seventh rise in the past 10 auctions. However, in New Zealand dollars, overall prices actually fell 0.5%. In the US, their trade deficit fell by more than expected in December as exports rose to their highest level in more than 1.5 years, outpacing a rise in imports. The US, as the engine of global trade, is holding its position. On an annual basis, the US trade deficit in goods and services is 2.7% of GDP, slightly lower than in 2016 than for 2015. For comparison, New Zealand's current account deficit runs at 3.1% of GDP. In Europe, Greece is failing to meet its growth targets, will fail to get its debt down to sustainable levels, and will need more bailout support, said the IMF in its latest review. All this is despite some progress in some areas, but it's not clear the IMF will actually deliver more bailout money. Greece is still in vigorous dispute with its EU creditors as well. In China, their foreign exchange reserves fell below the $3 trillion level in January for the first time in 5 years, after peaking at just a tad shy of $4 trillion in June 2014. But this latest decline was the lowest since June 2016. Tighter capital controls and a stronger yuan seems to have stemmed the outflows. Official reserves fell by over $12 billion, which is well below the average $52 billion monthly drop in the third quarter of last year. In Australia, the RBA left its benchmark interest rate unchanged at 1.5% late yesterday, but the commentary was mostly about rising growth and rising inflation prospects and housing pressures. Market observers no longer see rate cuts in Australia. The balance has now swung to guessing when the next rate hikes are due. In New York, the US Treasury 10-year yield is marginally lower today than at this time yesterday, now at 2.38%. At the same time, Australasian credit spreads for investment-grade debt have now fallen to their lowest level since November 2007. And while we're talking about credit spreads, we should remind ourselves that New Zealand's sovereign spreads are lower than for Australia, the USA, the UK and France, and level pegging with Germany, and way, way lower than for China. Oil prices are lower again today, now just under $52 for the US benchmark, while the Brent benchmark is just under $55 a barrel. The gold price, however, is up another $4 and now at $1,234 an ounce. And after a sharp jump following yesterday's inflation expectations survey, the Kiwi dollar has settled back, although still retaining some of the gain. It is now still at 73.2 US cents. On the cross rates, we're at 95.8 Aussie cents, and against the euro, 68.4 euro cents. The TWI is up slightly to 78.5, its highest in 20 months. I'm David Chaston. That was 90 at 9, brought to you by Interest.co.nz.